All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Chazakim Bruchim. First of all, we'd like to thank our dear host, Mr. Askari. Thank you very much for hosting the shiur tonight. And Baruch Hu should bless this house always to host smachot and good things and happy occasions and more Torah, more shiurim, tiskul mitzvot. May it bring you an abundance of blessings min hashamayim. Thank you. Chazakim Bruchim. So it's really amazing. No matter how many times you go through a parasha, every time that you go through it, again, you see something that you didn't see the last time. And this week is no different, and I discovered a lot of beautiful chidushim here in going through the parasha this week. So I'd like to share them with you. So as you know, the parasha starts off, Vayeshev Yaakov beretz migurei aviv beretz Canaan. So the parasha starts off that Yaakov is dwelling in the land of where his father lived, in the land of Canaan. And now, if Yaakov Avinu didn't have enough trouble until now it's already going to become even worse. He had already the story with Lavan that tried to cheat him so many times and trick him out of any penny that he ever earned. He had the story with Esav, who almost killed him. He had the story with Dinah, that his daughter, God forbid, we should never know of such things. His own daughter, the first Jewish girl in Klal Yisrael, was raped. Terrible. And now he's about to have the story of Yosef, of his son, his beloved son, the son of the woman that he truly loved. Oh, Bruchim Abayim, welcome. The son of the woman that he truly loved. That woman is now dead. His wife Rachel has passed away, and Yosef, the son of Rachel, is now going to be sold as a slave and taken away for 22 years. Another terrible tragedy. Now look at this. This is all coming together in Parashat Vayeshev. This is the culmination of Yaakov Avinu's tzarot. Says Maran Achida, this is a chidush I saw for the first time today, beautiful. Maran Achida, as always, in Sefer Chomat Anach, he says, take a look at the tzarot we just described. Yosef, what's the second letter of Yosef? Right? The second letter of Yosef, Vav, okay? Dinah was what happened in last week's parasha. What's the second letter of Dinah? Yud. Esav, the second letter of Esav? Sin, right? The Sin, Shin, right? And Lavan, the second letter of Lavan? Bet. Vav, Yud, Shin, Bet, Vayeshev. This week's parasha. In other words, in this week's parasha, this is like the peak of all the different sufferings that Yaakov Avinu had to suffer. Right here, it's hitting the climax. He suffered so much. He tells that to Paro. But all of those four, they're coming to the peak right over here. And Yaakov Avinu is now going to have to experience everything that he unfortunately doesn't want to, but it's coming about right now. So Yosef, Ele Toldot Yaakov, these are the offspring of Yaakov. Yosef ben 17 shana. Yosef was 17 years old. Haya ro'eh et echav batzon. He was a shepherd with his brothers, with the tzon, with the sheep. V'hu na'ar, and he would play with Bnei Bilha, Bnei Zilpa, with the sons of Bilha and Zilpa. Now Bilha and Zilpa were the maidservants. They were the maidservants. We know that Yaakov had two wives, Rachel and Leah, and each one of them had a maidservant that Yaakov also had relations with and had children with them. So they were the maidservants and they had children as well. Now, it says that he would play with them. He would spend time with them. Now it's so important. Pay careful attention to every word. He would spend time. He would play with Bnei Bilha, the sons of Bilha and the sons of Zilpa. Nishei Aviv, the wives of his father. Vayave Yosef. Yosef brought a dibatam ra'ah, the bad reports, el avihem, to the father. He brought bad reports to the father. Now, again, pay careful attention to every single word over here. Comes along Rashi, and Rashi tells us what are the bad reports. What is it that Yosef said is a problem about the sons of Leah? What was he telling Yaakov? So it says, number one, he told Yaakov that he saw them eating ever min achai. He saw them eating part of a live animal. That's number one. Number two, he said that the sons of Leah, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zevulun, they were calling the Bnei Hashpachot, the sons of Bilha and Zilpah, Avadim. They were calling them slaves. That's number two. And number three, says Yosef to Yaakov, Chashudin al ha'arayot. I suspect them of having forbidden relations. That's what he said. So three things that he reported to the father, to Yaakov Avinu. Now, comes along the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, and he explains over here that each one of these fears came about for a particular reason. And he explains something quite fascinating. I never saw this explanation before until today, and I'd like to share with you. He says the following idea. He says, first of all, there's a famous machloket between two great rabbis. One, his name was the Rif, Rabbeinu Yitzchak Alfasi, and one was the Rambam, Maimonides. They argue over the following case. What's the status? As you know, in Torah, there is such a concept of slavery. A person could have a slave that's a male. It could be a male non-Jew. It could be a male Jew too. A person could also have a slave that is a female. What if a person has a non-Jewish female slave? What is the halakha if the person has relations with his non-Jewish female slave and they have a child? First of all, what do we say the status of the mother is? Is she now elevated to the level of a wife? Or do we say that she's still a slave? That's question number one. Question number two, what about the child? Is the child considered to be a free person? Or is he also considered to be a slave? You hear the question?
Yes.
Okay. Two opinions on this matter. The opinion of the Rif was, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, that automatically when the husband meaning when the owner, the slave owner has relations with the female slave, he sets her free. She's not a slave anymore. She's now free, which automatically means that the child would be considered to be a legitimate child. So she now would have the status of a wife, and the child would be considered to be a Jewish kid, right? Welcome. Okay. What?
Does the owner have the power to make her Jewish, or it has to be
If he frees her, welcome. Tzaddikim, welcome.
It has to be by choice of the slave.
Yes. No, meaning when a person purchases a non-Jewish slave, so then if it's a male, he has to get circumcised, he has to go to the mikveh, and he has to become basically Jewish. If he's on the slave market, then he's selling himself, or he's being sold because of maybe he stole, or whatever the reason that he's being sold is, right? But the point is that the Rif was of the opinion that automatically this lady now becomes a wife, and the child would become, at the very least, doubtfully, a legitimate Jewish child. Okay? Now, why would that make a difference? Why would that matter? So explains the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, because let's say, for example, this guy, the same slave owner, had a wife, and he had another son from his wife. And the son got married and never had a child and then died. Remember the halakha of Yibum? When a brother dies, God forbid, and he doesn't leave behind any children, there's a mitzvah for the other brother to marry his wife and to have children with that wife. If this son of the maidservant is considered to be a real son, that means that the mitzvah of yibum would apply, and this lady whose husband died cannot remarry unless this guy either does yibum with her, meaning the son of the maidservant, either does yibum with her or does chalitza, which is when she takes off his shoe and she spits and she says, whoever doesn't marry the sister-in-law, this is what we do to him. You following what I'm saying or no? Yes or no? Yeah? What? Let's say it again. It's an interesting question. Just try and explain. Remember, what's the halacha by yibum? Yibum is, God forbid, you have two brothers.
Yes.
One of them is married. The other one, let's say he's not married. God forbid the brother who's married passes away, doesn't leave any children. There's a mitzvah called yibum that the brother has to marry her and have children with her. Okay. Now, that's only if he's a brother. He has to be, in order for this mitzvah to apply, right? So until he either does yibum, or let's say they say, you know what, we don't want to get married. So she has to take off his shoe. There's a special shoe he has to wear. She takes it off, she spits on the ground, and she says, this is what's done to the man who won't uphold the brother's name, the name of the brother. Okay. Is the guy who's born to a maidservant considered to be a brother or not? That's the question. So in other words, if God forbid the father had a son who died, a real son from a wife that died, would this brother now have an obligation? He's a half brother because it's the same father, but the mother over here is the maidservant.
Even the mother, but that's the rule.
What?
Even the mother is not.
The mother was a maidservant.
That's
the question.
And the non-Jewish
Yes, from the father, yes. Yes.
and non-Jewish maidservant.
Well, the thing is, now that he was with her,
She automatically tends to become Jewish.
because when she comes in, he has to take her to the mikveh and all of that procedure. So now does the son is exactly when this guy dies, can she go marry anybody, or does she have to basically either marry him or take off his shoe in that whole procedure? That's step number one. Let's ask it in a different sense. Let's say this guy who's with his maidservant, okay, if he has a son already, he has a 30-year-old son, and he was with that maidservant. There's a rule that a son is never allowed to have relations with a father's wife. Even if, let's say, they get divorced, he's never allowed to marry her or anything like that. Does she have the status, because he had relations with her, of father's wife or not?
Yes.
So that's exactly the question. This is exactly the question. So we're learning is Baruch haba. We're learning now. The opinion of the Rif was that yes, she has the status of a wife. That means if the son were to go and to have relations with her, it's like having relations with the father's wife. That means that if they have a child, the child is a brother full-fledged, and there's a lack of yibum that they have, now it's a full-fledged wife and a full-fledged kid, and everything is totally all the way, full-fledged. Okay, clear? Welcome, Tzadikim, welcome. Are we clear what we're saying?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. That's the opinion of the Rif. Comes along the Rambam, and he says, no, not so fast. The only way that this works, that the maidservant will become a wife, is if he intended on making her a wife while having relations with her. He had to have in mind that right now, by me having relations with this maidservant, she's not going to be a maidservant anymore. She's going to be a wife. Okay? If he doesn't have that in mind, she's still a maidservant, and the child is still an eved. Okay? That's what's going on.
Well, how can someone read his mind?
We have to know what did he have in mind? What was he thinking? What was he? We have to figure out what was the intention there.
When is he going to disclose that? How is he going to disclose
Who's there
it's
to judge?
nobody's there to judge. It's between him and what Hashem knows. That's it. That's the idea. So says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh a very interesting thing. He says Yosef looked at the brothers and he said to himself, you know what my brothers are thinking over here? They are thinking that these ladies, you know why they're calling my brothers slaves? They're calling my brothers slaves because in their view, unless Yaakov Avinu had in mind when he had relations with Bilhah and with Zilpah, that he's making them into wives, till this very moment, they're still slaves. Which would mean that the children that come out of them are also slaves. So Yosef is explaining why it is that the brothers are calling Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali. Why are the brothers from Leah calling them slaves? It's because they think that when Yaakov Avinu had relations with Bilhah and with Zilpah, the thought that he was doing at that time was he was just having relations with them. He never intended on making them wives. Understand?
Wasn't they became wives first? They married first and they had children. They give them their maidservants as wives. It wasn't that he was in a slave.
You're saying very good. You're saying excellent. Very good. Excellent. Hold that thought. Perfect. On target. For 1 second, before we get to that. Yosef, however, Yosef is upset at the brothers because what Yosef is doing is he's saying, no, you got it all wrong. Even if Yaakov Avinu had relations with Bilhah and with Zilpah for just for a nice evening, let's say. So even if that was what he was doing, they would become wives, like the opinion of the Rif, which means the children automatically are Jewish. And there are brothers. So this was the debate between the brothers and Yaakov and Yosef. And he's thinking that, look at what can result because of this. If, let's say, my brothers continue with their mistaken view that these ladies are maidservants, then they would potentially allow themselves to have relations with them. Because it's not my father's wife. It's my father's shivcha. Funny enough, last week's parasha says that Reuven went and had relations with Bilhah, which we know doesn't actually mean that Reuven had relations with Bilhah. Literally means he just moved the bed from Bilhah's tent to Leah's tent, which is like on the level of having relations with Bilhah, but the concept is there. They don't view Bilhah as a wife of Yaakov. That's the point. They don't see it that way.
Who,
The other brothers. They don't see these ladies as the wife of Yaakov. That's why he got up and moved it. Comes the pasuk and says, so what was Yosef doing? First of all, he was playing with Echav, his brothers. So the pasuk calls them brothers, meaning don't play games. They're not avadim, they're brothers. And he was playing with the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, Nishei Aviv, the wives of his father. Understand? Torah is going out of its way to tell you these are the wives of Yaakov Avinu. Why? Because exactly like Dr. Chaim Pur said, from the moment they came together into the picture, it was established as being a wife. Now, this is why, says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, you have to ask yourself a question. This is a very famous question. Why somebody as holy as Yosef, somebody as pure as Yosef, tzaddik as Yosef, I mean, such a wonderful person, why did he have to go to 22 years of torture, being kidnapped, being betrayed, being sold from the merchants to the Midianites, to the Ishmaelim, to the people in Egypt, to Potiphar? I mean, why? Why did he have to go through all the tests with Paro and the wife of Potiphar? Why did this happen to him? Says the Or Chaim HaKadosh over here, this was the punishment. The punishment for going and for thinking what he thought over here. He was dead wrong. Says the Or Chaim HaKadosh, how could Yosef ever dare to think that Yaakov Avinu, the holiest man alive, would have had relations with Bilhah and with Zilpah as like a one-night fling? You think that the brothers think that Yaakov Avinu, when he had relations with them, he didn't have relations in order to make them wives? He did it just because he was interested in a 10-minute ordeal? You understand? That report that he gave showed that that's what he was thinking Yaakov is doing. You understand? So he says, you got it all wrong. That's why he got punished.
No, wait a second.
There's
Why
that.
are you saying that he was thinking that it was? He's actually doing opposite. He's going playing with them.
Because in his mind,
Okay.
the brothers
talk, but-
are thinking this, that really, you know why they're calling my brothers slaves? They're calling them slaves because in their mind, the mothers of these boys are not real wives. They're still slaves.
Or saying it?
He was thinking that that's what they're thinking.
So that's his punishment because he was
Exactly.
thinking.
Because how could you ever think that anybody would think that these women are still slaves? In order for that to be the case, it would have had to be that Yaakov Avinu had relations with them as like, whenever I need a good, exactly. That's what it is. Exactly. It's as if Yaakov Avinu is the player. Exactly. Right?
11 brothers. So
Exactly right. So that's the mistake. Says the Or Chaim HaKadosh. You want to know why he was punished? Because the mere thought that somebody should think that about Yaakov Avinu is so far off. It's not even. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
So that's why, because he gave that report to Yaakov, that shows that that's what he was thinking. But I'll read through the words of the Or Chaim HaKadosh. He says the following. He says, "V'ne'enash Yosef al even the data Rambam, even according to the Rambam, that you have to have in mind that you're making these women into a wife now, right? Yodeh be'adam tzaddik Yaakov, he would admit that somebody who's a tzaddik like Yaakov, ki min hastam l'shem ishut baal, that he had relations to make them wives. So there's no question here they're wives. Understand? So why did they actually call them slaves? Not because they thought they were really slaves, because they were making fun of them. They weren't on the same level, the same status, whatever. Something else. But not that they really thought that they were maidservants and not wives. So the fact that Yosef thought that somebody would think that about Yaakov Avinu got him 22 years. Now here's the very interesting thing, points out the Or Chaim HaKadosh. Look at the level of betrayal that we're talking about now. So we see that Yaakov Avinu treats Yosef very nice, okay, with a little bit of favoritism, fine. But Yosef, he looks at everybody equal, including the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, and while everybody else is making fun of them, he's embracing them, he's treating them like equals, he is the one who is completely like surrounding them, hugging them, playing with them.
Punished.
What?
Is feeling, making everybody feeling good. Why punishment?
Again, that's what I'm trying to say. So we just gave an answer for a wrong thought that he had. But my point is, look at the level of betrayal. So he's there fighting for you. He's sticking up for you. He's taking care of you. Brothers from Bilhah and Zilpah, Gad, Naphtali, Dan, Asher. And then comes time to sell him or to kill him or to lower him into a pit. And where are you? Nowhere to be found. Nobody came to his aid. Not Gad, not Asher, not Dan, not Naphtali. You know what the level of betrayal that is? You know how hurtful that is?
They probably didn't have any power over Yehuda and Brother also. They probably taxed Shimon. They have no say, I guess.
So that's the answer, Dr. Chaimpour, on the money.
No, that's
I'll read to you what he says. He says, it's very possible. It could be that they just said, listen, you guys are the 6 brothers. You guys are the sons of Leah, the Gvira, the strong one, the royalty. We're going to go with what you say. And that's that.
I mean, Yehuda was very powerful. He was like
Yehuda was very powerful. They were all very powerful.
I know.
But you would think that somebody that was so good to you, he stood up for you, for your name, for everything, and you hear the crickets. Nothing. Nobody helping to aid, nobody helping you. Okay, so I thought that was a very, very incredible word from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, but I've got a lot more. I will try, listen to this. So he tells them the dream. He tells them the dream, and he says to them, I saw the sun, the moon, 11 stars bowing down to me. Everybody was bowing down to me. Okay, look at the dream. So Yaakov Avinu says to him, what are you talking about? Havo, navo, am I going to come? Ani, ve'imcha, ve'achecha, me, your mom, and your brothers to bow down to you? Now, why is it so strange? Because the moon represents the lady, right? The moon comes once every month. It has a cycle. The moon receives from the sun, right? The moon represents the lady. So he says, it's not possible for your mother to bow down to. She passed away. She's dead, as Rashi explains. Look at this beautiful chidush. Havo navo. He says, Ma hachalom hazeh asher chalamta. Havo navo. He says, what is this dream? Asher chalamta. Havo navo. Will we come to bow down to you? What is this dream that you dreamt? Look at the words. Asher chalamta havo. Asher. What's the last letter? Resh. Chalamta, chet lamed, is what? Chet, resh chet lamed, Rachel, right? Chalamta, havo, meta, what's that mean? Mem, tough, and then the hey of havo, meta, Rachel, meta. In the words of what's the dream that you dreamt? He's telling him in the same sentence, Rachel is dead, Rachel meta. It's not possible for this to happen. Did you catch that or no? No?
You have to look at it.
You have to see the words in front of you.
Yeah.
Asher chalamta havo. He's telling Yosef, how could it be that we're going to come and bow down to you? Your mother passed away, so she cannot bow down to you. So Asher, the last letter is Resh. Chalamta is Chet Lamed, Mem Taf. Resh Chet Lamed is Rachel. Mem Taf, and the next word Havo is Mem Taf, and Hey is Meta. Rachel Meta. Rachel, your mother is dead. It's embedded in the words. Now better or no?
Yeah. Aleph and Shin, H at the beginning.
Here. Okay, it's a good point. But this is just literally the code that Rachel is dead. I thought that was amazing. Exactly. So Yaakov was saying there are dvarim betelim over here. But look at the precision of the dreams now. Now he says, I saw another dream. I saw 11 bundles of grains, right? And they were all bowing down to my bundle of grains. Now, how did it say that my bundle was standing tall? It says, Vehine kama lumati. My bundle stood up, v'gam nitzava. It was standing strong. And all of your bundles bowed down to mine. Listen to this now. V'hine kama alumati. My bundle was standing up. Yosef was in jail in Egypt for how many years? In jail he was when he came out to Paro.
7.
He was in jail for 12 years.
12.
A total of 12 years in jail. How many months is 12 years? 144. So he says, Vihine, when are you all going to bow down to me? Kama, my stock stood up. When will it stand up? Kama is gematria, kuf is 100, mem is 40, and hey is 5. At month number 145, that's when my stock will stand up, and that's when everybody's going to come and bow down to me. Amazing. So in the words, it's a comma. It's going to stand up. It's amazing. The word that he's using is so precise because the first 144 he's going to be in jail. But that 145, that's when everybody comes and bows down. This was, no, I don't remember who I saw this from. I don't have it written down. Sorry, Mechila. But yeah. Now, now, what's going on over here is that this really is the beginning of Shibud Mitzrayim. This is the beginning of when the Jews are going down to Egypt. Because of Yosef being sold as a slave, the Jewish people went down to Egypt. So what was the source? What was the reason for the problem? So the answer is the favoritism that Yaakov Avinu showed to Yosef got them all jealous. No question about it. Ve'asa lo ketonet pasim. He made for Yosef a cloak of stripes, of colors, pasim. Says Maran Achida, pasim stands for all four things that Yosef had to deal with. Pasim is Potifar, pay, Potifar, Samech Socharim, the people who sold him. Yud is the Ishmaelim, the Ishmaelites that he went with, and Mem is the Midianim. That he transferred over from the Midianites to the Ishmaelim. So all four of those things were because of what? The Ketonet Pasim. All of that was because of that. You see over here, it's so important never to show favoritism to one child over the other. Never to do that. Because when you do that, you cause and you create jealousy. That's why, by the way, the night of the Seder, we have on the table in the Seder plate, the karpas, right? What's the significance of the karpas? If you look in Rashi over here on the word pasim, you'll see he says it's the same root as karpas, meaning the reason that we put the karpas on the plate of the Seder is because we're talking about how we got out of Egypt on the night of Pesach. But in order to remember how we got out, first you have to remember how did we get in? How did we get there? The answer was because of the jealousy between the brothers. And we spoke about this in the past. The jealousy between the brothers was, the decree was a 400-year decree. Remember, 400 is what gematria, guys? Who remembers last couple of drashot and shirim? Remember, guys? No? What? 400 is gematria ra ayin. Evil eye. When you're jealous, there's evil eye. Ra ayin. Okay? 400, there's jealousy between the brothers and Yosef that got the 400-year decree of slavery because of the ra ayin. Esav was jealous of Yaakov. How many men did he come with? 400 men, right? Because he had a ra ayin. Remember, whenever you see the number 400, it's ra ayin. Esav, what did I say? Sorry. So Esav came to Yaakov, 400 men, because he was jealous of him. How much? Ra ayin. He had the evil eye. Ephron wanted Avraham Avinu's money. He was tarofing back and forth. How much did he end up selling it for? 400, exactly. 400 shekel kesef ra ayin, right? Why does the Torah drop the vav of the name Ephron after he took the money instead of saying ayin pei resh vav nun, just ayin pei resh nun? Because Ephron without the vav is 400, right? That's ra ayin. That's the evil eye. What does it mean, evil eye? You're jealous. You're jealous of the other person. So the jealousy brings the 400. That's ra ayin. That's destruction. That's devastation. Very bad. So that's why over here they had this decree. Now, over here we see this again and again. Yaakov Avinu sends Yosef to go and to find his brothers, and he. It says over here all of a sudden that somebody sees him along the way. He sees him. He sees that he's lost in the field. Somebody finds him, and it says like this. This man finds Yosef, and Yosef is like lost in the field. The man asks him, what do you want? Now over here, this was a giveaway to Yosef. Rashi tells us, who was this man who came to ask from Yosef? Who was this person? This was the Malach Gabriel. It was the angel Gabriel that was talking to Yosef. How did Yosef know that this was a Malach? Because normally when somebody's lost, he has to find somebody else. Over here, this person found him and asked him, what do you need? Where do you need to go? which is an interesting thing to think about, because that means that had this man not bumped into Yosef, Yosef would not have found his brothers and he would not have been sold. So this was all divine orchestration. Remember, everything over here is divinely orchestrated. We think, oh, because he happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, he was with his brothers, he was all alone, they had an opportunity, they got him, they put him in the pit. No. Hashem specifically sent his malach to that place to send him there to the brothers, to be all alone, to be able to be vulnerable and to be thrown into a pit. Very important to understand that. So he says, so Yosef picks up on this. Says the Dad Zekenim. What is the word to'eh? That he's lost. It's with a taf, an ayin, and a hey. Says the Dad Zekenim over here. The taf is 400. What's the 400? That's the 400 years they're going to be now slaves in Egypt. What's the ayin? That's the second exile. The exile of Babel with Babylon, which lasted 70 years. And then the hey is the 5. What's 5? That's the 5,000-year exile of Edom that we're in right now. That after those 5,000 years, Mashiach could come, and we're waiting every day for that. So over here, this meeting with Malach Gabriel was assigned to Yosef, that Yosef, right now, this is the beginning of the exile. It's happening right now. And Yosef goes anyway. Amazing. Understand what's happening over here. He sees this is a malach talking, and he understands it's not a normal person. But he continues to go because he understands this is all divinely orchestrated, as hard as it may be. He doesn't understand exactly what's about to happen, but he gets that there's something about to happen. Amazing concept. And that's why over here it says that Yaakov sent him me'emek Chevron. Emek Chevron means the depth of Chevron. Emek in Gematria, we know that it was supposed to be 400 years of slavery. It ended up being only 210. The word emek, says the Balaturim also, ayin is 70, mem is 40, that's 110, plus kuf is another 100, 210. This right now is the beginning of the whole thing, right now. Him leaving Hebron, going over there, this is the beginning of all the Galuyot. Guys, you following or no?
No.
100%?
Even back then, the Jewish people got a discount.
But it was a discount at a very difficult expense. It was because
this
of
was the whole thing was done for them to come.
the discount was because of Yosef suffering all of this time. He absorbed the 190.
Wow.
That's the idea of the kits. The 190 was because of Yosef suffering this entire time. That's one explanation that's brought down.
For the 22 years of suffering?
Yes.
But
He,
that's
That's 22 years was suffering. I mean, he was king for the last 7 years.
still, but it says that when the tovatam shel reshaim, that when the goodness that comes about through the wicked for the tzaddik is like, give a big tzaddik like the Baba Sali the nicest penthouse in Vegas. What's he gonna do with it? You know what I'm saying?
Rabbi,
Doesn't do anything for him.
How Yosef
Yes.
knew 70? He knew 70 different languages.
Right, he was taught. There was a malach that came to teach him, especially so that he should be able to rise to power. That's what's brought down.
70.
Sfat lo yadati. It says, we say in every Thursday morning. Sfat lo yadati. Yosef says, "There's the languages I don't know." All of a sudden, Ishma. Right now, I all of a sudden know how to hear it. Why? Because the malach came and taught him all the languages so that he could be the second to the king. That's what the Midrash tells us. So over here, Abotai, we really see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has established a tremendous amount of orchestration in order that everything should work out just perfectly for Yosef to begin the exile. Now, I want to move on to another very important subject, which I don't want to miss out on, and that's the following, gentlemen. Chazal teach us, I've spoken about this in the past, but I don't want to miss the opportunity. Yehuda now leaves his brothers. Why does he leave his brothers? Because he's held responsible for the fact that Yosef was sold. He was the leader of the tribes. And because of that, the fact that he did not prevent the sale of Yosef, he did say, let's not kill him. but they decided to sell him instead. He could have gotten up and said, don't sell him at all. Let's just bring him back home. But he didn't. Because of that, he was held responsible for the pain and suffering of Yaakov Avinu. And therefore, it says, Yarad Migdulato. He was lowered from his high status. He left everybody and he started a little bit of a new life, a new chapter somewhere else. So he goes and he finds a woman. Her name was the daughter of Shua, doesn't say her exact name. And he marries her and he has 3 sons with her. And unfortunately, his wife dies and 2 of his sons die too. Terrible suffering. And there's no question, he's very clear on the fact, he knows why this is happening to him. He knows it's because of the fact that he gave his father suffering. But it's not an easy thing to absorb. However, Chazal pointed to a little bit more specific than that. Chazal say, you want to know why he really suffered? It's not just because of the pain of the father. But Chazal say there's a concept that when somebody starts a mitzvah and does not finish that mitzvah, then this is what happens to him. Kol hamatchil mitzvah ve'eino gomra, he starts a mitzvah and doesn't complete it, says the Gemara, kover ishto banav. He buries his wife and children. What? Somebody started a mitzvah and doesn't complete it, buries his wife and children? Isn't this a shocking statement? It's a very harsh statement. I think if you ask me, I would say probably, I mentioned this recently, somebody said, I wouldn't want to start a mitzvah then. That's what's going to happen. What if I don't finish it? Khalila.
What was the mitzvah that he started?
He started the mitzvah of saving Yosef, and he didn't finish it. He ended up selling him to God knows where. Just whatever happens, happens. It wasn't us. That's what he did.
Who was he again?
Yehuda. Now, the truth is, everybody did it together, but he was the leader. He was the one that they would have listened to. Why is this so? I saw a chidush from Rabbi Ovadia not long ago. Rabbi Ovadia explains this in the most beautiful way. The reason is because whenever you do a mitzvah, you create an angel on the spot. You learn one word of Torah, you create an angel. You did a chesed for somebody, you gave tzedakah, you create an angel in Shamayim. On the spot. On the spot. Now, judging by how good you were when you did it, that will determine the strength and the posture of that angel. Meaning, if you gave the tzedakah with a smile, and you made the poor man feel happy, you spoke good words to him, you cheered him up, lifted up his spirits, and you made him feel like $1 million. So then that angel that you created will be big and tall and strong, and the way it should be, right? Now, if let's say you gave it to him when you were okay, you barely pulled out the $1.50 you had from your pocket, right? Yeah, that's what you managed to. So the angel is like there, but it's like a Picasso face, it's like, it's messed up like that. Now, that's at least, but you did the mitzvah. What happens though, if you start the mitzvah and then you don't finish it? Then you started, so you built like a, something over here. There's hands, there are legs, but it's missing eyes, it's missing ears, it's missing, it's like half created. So every angel that you create, that's good, that's strong, when a person goes up after 120, that angel is there to protect you, and he's strong, and he's able to protect you, because you did the mitzvah, you did it properly. But when you create half an angel, he's mad. He's very mad.
Is that a Shingala?
No, it's just a mad angel. He's upset that he's not complete. He doesn't have eyes, he doesn't have ears, he doesn't have a nose. And instead of him being a defense attorney for you, he's now going to complain to Hashem. Look what he did. Look what he did. He created me like this. So now he's a prosecuting angel. So says the Gemara, the person starts a mitzvah, doesn't finish it, he buries his wife and children. Chas v'chalila. Very harsh. Very harsh, but that's what it's
If you
saying.
make 100 big mitzvot and you finish them, and you make 2 or 3 mitzvot and you don't finish them, then still guilty.
Again, don't kill the messenger. I'm just telling you what it says. You understand? This is the concept. This is the concept.
Why
Yes.
would somebody start the mitzvah that we think it's a little bit challenging? Why would start in the first place? If there's such a punishment for not finishing.
Sometimes there's no choice. Sometimes you're in a predicament where there is nobody else to do it. You have to do it. You know you can do it. You know that you're the only one qualified to do it, and you have to do it.
I want to say to the neder, but not making the commitment. Is it the same thing?
Bli neder means you're not failing in the area of a neder, meaning you're, as far as a person who made a official commitment, you're saying, I'm not making an official commitment. But if you start the mitzvah, then you got to finish the mitzvah. You know, person could say, I'll try, I'll this. I'm not promising, but so you're not violating your promise. But if you start the mitzvah, you got to finish the mitzvah.
Some people get together and say, okay, let's make a synagogue. Let's collect the money. That never happens.
Okay, so they're trying. They didn't end up doing the mitzvah, not because they didn't even start. They tried. Thank you. You see what I'm saying? They didn't even start it yet. They tried and gathered, but but when you're already starting, you're already building, you're already doing it, you put the brakes on it, that's a problem. One more point that I want to bring out, and with that we'll call it a night. What's so important to never forget this lesson from the Parashat. Yehuda goes and has relations with Tamar, his daughter-in-law. What does it mean, his daughter-in-law? His sons died, and they were supposed to allow Shelah to marry her. They said no. You know why? Because if 2 of my sons already died, then I'm not going to let the 3rd one go. She then gets dressed up like a harlot, and she goes and she stands on the side of the street. And it says that Yehuda was traveling. He wasn't married anymore. His own wife passed away, like we just learned. And the Malach takes him, says the Me'amar Le'ez, and pushes him in the direction of Tamar. Now, by the way, why doesn't he know what Tamar looks like? Look at what a tzaddik this man was. He never looked at his own daughter-in-law out of tzniut. He never even saw her. Meaning she was around, but she was very modest. She had a veil, but the point is he didn't know what she looked like in general. It's very, very tzanua. She was very tzanua, and so was he. So now the Malach.
How is he tzaddik and small if he's going to do an action?
So that's what I was trying to
2 days
say.
later.
He wasn't even in the direction of her. There was an angel, the Me'amla says, that takes him and throws him in her direction. Not that he was interested. Then he tries turning away and he gets thrown back in that direction again. You look at the Me'amla in the English, it explains it beautifully. So he goes ahead and he realizes something is going on over here. So he asks her, are you Jewish? I'm Jewish, yes. Are you married? No, I'm not married. Are you an Ida? No, I'm not an Ida. And he goes through a whole interrogation. And finally they say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it. And they did it. And it was mutar. And you should know, you could tell from the psukim that it wasn't like the most embarrassing thing. Because afterwards, how did he pay her? He said, I'll send you a sheep from my flock. And she said, well, what happens until then? So he says, take my staff and my ring as a collateral and then give it back to me. So, I always wondered, imagine somebody goes and does something like this, he has some kind of thing with a harlot, God forbid, and he has to send the money, So, would you send your buddy to go and, listen, I just had this situation. Can you please go and, just pay her because I can't make it today. You know what I'm saying? I always wondered. That's exactly what he does. He says, listen, I was by this lady the other day and the sheep, you got to bring the sheep. Joseph. Venmo, right? So he sends his buddy. So if I'm not mistaken, the Rambam points out that this was not like the worst. It wasn't the biggest deal what he did. It was a very common thing. And that's why when he goes, he asks her, he asks around, where's the harlot? And they said, well, was there a harlot here? We never saw any harlot. We would have known about this, Nobody's embarrassed about this. Okay, so fine. So he sends it, she's not there. They find out a couple of months later that she's pregnant. And now, being that she was supposed to marry Shelah, the third son, and she didn't, she was not faithful to the family. There's a status, they have to kill her. They're going to take her now and they're going to burn her. Okay, fine. Now she has the opportunity to say, Yehuda, you're the father. This is a big thing that they do on shows. Hashem Yishmor, on these morning shows where they have the DNA tests and all these, and they say, you're the father, he's the father. And they announce to the whole world, you're the father. Remember that from a long time ago when DNA tests started coming out. So she could have said that. She could have said that to him. You're the father. But she would have embarrassed him because he's about to kill her. He's about to take her. And meanwhile, he's the source of the whole thing. But she chose to be killed herself in the fire than to embarrass somebody else. And that's such an important lesson. Chazal say, Noach lo le'adam she'apil atzmo letoch kibshan ha'esh ve'al yalbin pnei chavero barabim. A person should rather die than embarrass his fellow. And the reason is because, explains Rabbeinu Yonah, or this with the end, just like if, God forbid, somebody puts a gun to your head and says, either you shoot him or I shoot you. The halakha says we have to say, if we don't have any other choice, we say, shoot me. I'm not allowed to take his life. I have to give up my own life and not kill him. That applies also to other things that are considered killing as well. Embarrassing somebody, explains Rabbeinu Yonah, when you cause the redness of his face to leave and now he's all white, it's as if you killed him. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, you have to give up your life because it's also like killing that person. You embarrass him. So a lot of times we feel like we can say things to people, we can just, joke around, but it's at that guy's expense. You're embarrassing him. Chas v'chalila, a person has to give up his life and not embarrass somebody. Guys, we'll call it a night. Chazakim v'ruchim. Thank you everybody for joining us on Zoom. Hashem will continue next week.